Metal Gear Solid turns 25. That's right, it's been a quarter of a century since we first set foot on Shadow Moses, got a major cramp trying to survive this part, and got absolutely freaked out by Psycho Mantis. At the time of its release in 1998, MGS was regarded as groundbreaking both for its visual storytelling and stealth gameplay. And in the years since, the game has sold over 7 million copies and has gone on to be regarded as one of the best games ever. And so in this video, I wanted to revisit Hideo Kojima's classic to see how well it's aged a quarter of a century later. I'm not going to be playing any of the re-releases or remasters or Twin Snakes, no, this is the very same version I had as a kid. We begin with the Police Knots jingle, and then the game starts with a stylish opening sequence of Snake infiltrating Shadow Moses. And PS1 jaggies aside, this still holds up. Back in 1998, many AAA games still didn't have voiceover, and the ones that did often look like this.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
Meanwhile, MGS gives us this sleek cinematic opening that could have come straight from a Hollywood action thriller. And the amazing thing is, this level of quality continues throughout the entire game due to the devs deciding to go with the in-engine cutscenes instead of the pre-rendered ones. Alright, let's go. Ah, damn it. Oh yes, of course, the backwards Japanese controls, they were a nuisance back then and still take a while to get used to. Okay, Snake, try to remember the basics of CQC. Oh wait, that doesn't exist yet. All these years later, the little details still jump out at me, like the credits still rolling when you start, the steam in Snake's breath, and the light reflecting from the puddles. It all gives you an extra sense of cinematic immersion. The plot starts off pretty simple. It's your typical action thriller. We've got the bad guys, the hostages, and a race against time to save them. But Kojima makes sure to insert what would become his signature quirky style of narrative. For example, Snake immediately starts flirting with his field operators.
I can't believe I'm being hit on by the famous Solid Snake.
Playing these early parts of the game all these years later really does feel like coming back to the house you grew up in. Your muscle memory just kind of kicks in. You know where all the rations are, you know that the SOCOM is at the back of the truck, and you still remember the timing for the spotlight. This helipad stage is particularly well known because many of us grew up with the PlayStation demo discs, which included the early parts of this game. In fact, while the final game ended up selling an impressive 7 million copies, a staggering 12 million demos of MGS were shipped. The level design in these early parts of the game is also meticulously crafted. Surveillance cameras and guards are placed at just the right intervals to get you familiar with the gameplay mechanics. The game also encourages exploration. You're free to either head straight for the target or snoop around and find useful items and, of course, Easter eggs, like Johnny taking a shit with his trousers still on. This game was also pushing the hardware to its limits by giving the characters as much details as they could on a 32-bit system. Look, they even tried to give DARPA Chief an arse. Now, being an analog for the player, most of poor Snake's dialogue does consist of him just repeating what was said to him as a question.
Revolution, Rex. There are 2 passwords. Baker, Psycho Mantis.
But again, I think we can be forgiving of this, as the game does a lot of heavy lifting in these early sections to try and introduce new story twists, characters, and gameplay elements. And all of these twists start to come at us hard and fast. We learn about the Metal Gear, the suspicious weapons testing, and then suddenly Anderson just dies. Meryl, I can see you're standing there, you know?
Your hands are shaking.
Actually, Snake, I'm pretty sure those are just the PlayStation 1 jaggies. These days, people complain that new games tend to hold the player's hand a bit too much, while older games were renowned for doing the opposite. I think that, for the most part, MGS struck a pretty good balance in that department. If you were ever stuck, one of the codec channels would usually give you a clue. But once I learned the game, I never really saw the need to use the codec, which is actually filled with a bunch of its own Easter eggs, like Master Miller's PSAs.
After playing for a long time, you should get some rest too.
But my favorite has to be cold calling Mei Ling. If you keep calling her and not saving, she will start to tell you off.
Come on, Snake, don't call me for no reason.
And then eventually she'll stick her tongue out. It also seems like the developers knew we would be replaying this game for years to come, so they threw in little Easter eggs for when we tried to break the game. For example, if you blow up the wall leading to President Baker, you can see him in the room in the first-person view before the cutscene starts. And you can shoot him, which will result in a game over screen with no explanation except for Ocelot, who you haven't met yet, saying,
You idiot!
In a game famous for its novel boss fights, this one is pretty straightforward as the game is still easing the player into its world. And you can quickly start to see why every teenage boy who played this game thought this was the coolest, deepest piece of art ever made. You've got slick cinematics, a no-nonsense stoic protagonist, giant mechs, and a cyborg ninja all wrapped in a plot that takes itself just a little too seriously. You know, just like every 14-year-old boy. And this is where Kojima begins to lean into his signature trope of meta gameplay.
Oh, that's right. It should be on the back of the CD case.
Now, who else didn't realize that Baker was talking about the real-life game CD? Because I know I didn't. I spent an hour running around trying to find the CD inside the game. I guess it also didn't help that he gives you a disc, so I was trying to figure out the button for Snake to look at the back of the disc in first-person view.
It's your eyes.
My eyes.
They're not soldiers' eyes.
Oh, look at this, straight for the pickup lines. And here we have more examples of simple but efficient game design. Every time you want to get a new weapon or item, you've got to get past some kind of obstacle or booby trap. The game rarely gives you anything for free, and that way all the new toys you pick up always feel earned. I always found it a bit messed up that if you trigger the lasers, you don't just get an immediate game over screen like in most other games. Instead, the doors close, and Snake has no other choice but to Beyblade on the spot until he chokes to death. But this section is a great example of the game giving you options. There's rarely a single way to get past an obstacle or defeat a boss. The cigarettes are the most well-known option to get past the lasers, but not the only one. If you bother to explore and pick up the thermal goggles, you can use them too. Just like you can use them instead of a mine detector in the next section. The tank battle. Again, Snake is the hardest man alive. Look, he gets run over by a tank and just walks it off. Now, despite being a 3D game, most of MGS still sticks to the overhead perspective of its 2D predecessors. And this is something that hasn't aged too well in my opinion. For example, who didn't realize the door in front of the nuclear building was actually slightly open? The Grey Fox section is still as eerie as it was 25 years ago, but the boss fight itself does leave a bit more to be desired, mainly because it relies on hand-to-hand combat, which was always one of the weakest points of the game. I'd like to, but look, I can't because of the stupid collision detection. Snake then meets his future life partner before going to find Meryl in disguise. Meryl, is that you? Nope. How about you? Nope. I don't think any of these are Meryl. Meryl, is that you? Okay, I'll give you a second.
You've got a great butt.
It's pretty good, but it's no DARPA, Chief. At this point, the game does start to establish a bit of a pattern. Each time Snake meets a new character, they tend to go on a long soliloquy talking about their motivation, backstory, fears, and struggles. This tell, don't show approach can feel a bit ham-fisted at times, but I'd rather have these richer characters with needs and motivations even if they won't shut up about them over a bunch of one-dimensional polygons. Now, the Psycho Mantis section is probably the most famous part of this game, and for good reason. This was the first major meta gameplay experience in video games. There is nothing particularly special about the boss battle itself, instead it's all about the framing and presentation. This is Kojima f***ing with the player and doing a great job at it. It unfolds gradually from the eerie music to Meryl being possessed, to Mantis reading your memory card, and then making your controller vibrate. By the time the boss battle actually starts, you're already on edge, and then the screen goes black. And I think this is one of the biggest strengths of this game. It works around the limitations of the hardware and uses simple elements in novel ways to give you a great sense of depth. And 25 years later, I'm still learning new things about this game. I always beat Mantis by changing the controller ports, but something I didn't realize until this playthrough was that you can actually shoot these statues to disable his power. And so Snake defeats Psycho Mantis and then gives the dying villain some motivational life coaching for the road.
A strong man doesn't need to read the future. He makes his own. Never doubt yourself. Just let it make you stronger. Learn something from it.
Meryl, I don't understand why zigzag around when you could have just walked in a straight line. You're embarrassing me in front of Sniper Wolf. And so Meryl gets hit by Sniper Wolf, which begins the first set of backtracking in this game. All the way back to the first building to get the sniper rifle, then all the way back, then you take on Sniper Wolf, only to get caught and taken all the way back again. I guess you can use the boxes to go back and forth, which speeds things up a little, but still, this is where the game's short length really begins to show. Alright, time for the torture sequence.
What's the trick behind that key?
Trick?
It's no use, Ocelot. This guy is the one asking all the questions in this game. You won't get anything out of him. And I think this is another one of those sections that make this a standout game. Most of its contemporaries would have just given you the option to survive or die from the torture. However, Metal Gear Solid throws the surrender option in the mix. This branches the story into two paths. Resist and Meryl lives. Surrender and you'll be riding into the sunrise with Otacon. Also, this is a real torture because I'm pretty sure this bit is responsible for our generation getting early arthritis. Everyone I've ever talked to has their own method. The double finger, the chopstick, using your mum's massager. Let me know your method of surviving the torture in the comments below. Of course, breaking out of the cell is another example of the game doing things slightly different. I will admit playing this for the first time with no clues, knowing to lay down and use the ketchup bottle to fake your own death is a bit of a stretch, and I think the developers realize that, so if you get tortured enough, the cyborg ninja will just turn up and slice the door. It's so weird how Johnny is the only guard in the game that you can't actually kill. It's almost as if Kojima foresaw that he would bring him back a decade later as part of a convoluted plot to tie up the franchise's many loose ends. Alright, so we trek all the way across the island until we're back to where we left off. Let's see. What? Ah, fuck. God damn it, stupid staircase with the endless guards just spawning in. So yes, this is kind of another drawn-out backtracking section. You go up, then rappel down, then go down the second tower. Oh no, look, the stairs are broken. Back we go. We then get another trademark, very serious, very emotional exchange between the fellas.
Have you ever loved someone?
And then we go up again. The liquid hind fight is pretty fun. But then we're back to the stairs. Oh, thank God, at least the lift works.
Look out, Snake! The guys who stole my stealth prototypes are in there with you!
The second Sniper Wolf battle is pretty much an extension of the first one, but has a much greater sense of atmosphere this time. Alright, Disc 2, baby. As I was saying, Disc 2. We start by going through the facility at the end of Terminator 2. That Kojima, look, he loves an homage. How did all these ravens get so deep underground? It's almost like there's some kind of a deliberate foreshadowing.
You know of the World Eskimo Indian Olympics?
Raven is another boss that can be taken out in a bunch of different ways, but I always prefer the Stinger missile. I found that the rockets just ended up getting intercepted, and if you're really slick, you can try to take him on with just a grenade. At this point, the game does start to get into a fever dream territory. We've got this big mech just parked here. Meanwhile, Liquid is talking about a 4D chess game of geopolitics, and then Snake just drops the card key, and if he's too slow to go get it, a rat eats it, and then suddenly it becomes an episode of Tom and Jerry. Also, do we really need that many cameras? Of course, this is followed by the game's final backtracking sequence in the form of the PAL key temperature puzzle. At least the developers tried to break the monotony with the subplot of Naomi betraying the team and injecting Snake with Fox dye. And speaking of betrayals, it turns out Master Miller was Liquid all along. Topless Liquid. Seriously, it's freezing in Alaska, why is he topless? And so the two brothers assume their natural narrative places. Liquid with the endless exposition, and Solid with his endless questions.
You don't mean... Are you telling me Naomi was working with the Pentagon? There's a vaccine, a bug in the virus's programming.
Eventually, the two brothers decide to take a break from talking and engage in a boss battle. And I must say, Metal Gear Rex still looks as cool as it did a quarter of a century ago. Oh look, it's Grey Fox, and he wants to reconcile with his old friend Snake through the power of monologuing.
Neither truly alive, nor truly dead.
Oh no, he's been trampled. Probably should have spent less time talking. Snake then destroys the Metal Gear and the two brothers meet in the flaming wreckage of the walking tank.
I won't die as long as you still live.
I mean, he wasn't lying, even if he did it in the form of a possessed hand. Liquid goes on one final soliloquy to end all soliloquies, from revealing that they're Big Boss's clones, to a lecture on the human genome, and then the circle of life. Snake gets bored and decides to have a nice heart-to-heart with Colonel Campbell.
It's the least I can do for you, after all the lies.
Hold on, who's playing the sad piano? Colonel, I think this line's been compromised. Well, I guess the only thing left to do is to have a topless fistfight. With Liquid defeated and Meryl/Otacon in your arms, all that's left is to make a tremendous escape. We get the chase, followed by the crash. Liquid is about to shoot them, but then gets taken out by Fox dye. Snake and Meryl/Otacon then snowmobile happily into the sunrise, while eulogizing on the lofty concept of finding meaning in life.
Maybe it's time I live for someone else.
And so there we have it, Metal Gear Solid. So 25 years later, does it still hold up? Well, if I could only pick one word to describe this game, it would be ambitious. The game sets lofty goals in both its storytelling and gameplay. What starts as a stylish but pretty standard espionage thriller quickly morphs into an anti-war story that's also about cloning and a secret plot to take over the world where the characters betray each other and fall in love and forgive each other and find redemption, all while exploring the big themes of family, destiny, and the meaning of life, with a good dose of sci-fi, supernatural, mysticism, cyborg ninjas, and mechs thrown in. So naturally, with so many spinning plates, a few of them are bound to wobble or even fall down. But you've got to admire the game for trying. Let's be honest, the word moderation has never been part of Hideo Kojima's lexicon. It feels like while making the game, he decided to just throw in everything that he thought was cool or important in life. And maybe that's why the story and characters have resonated with so many of us. There's something in here for everyone. And if you don't feel like sitting through another 20-minute filibuster about genetics or Japanese robots, then you can just skip it and enjoy the game itself. In my video on MGS2, I talked about how many of Kojima's points on the manipulation of digital information rings truer now than it did back when the game first came out. And the same can be said about the last few paragraphs of text that he added to the end of this game. They describe the scale and destructive power of nuclear weapons, an issue that unfortunately is more relevant for all of us now than it was 25 years ago. But this is still a video game, so what about the gameplay? Well, when I sat down to replay this game, I knew that I was going to have a good time, but I think I underestimated how much fun I was going to have playing the first half of this game. Limited hand-to-hand controls and awkward camera mechanics aside, this game still holds up. It does a great job of easing you into its world, it challenges you just enough, it rewards you for exploring and showing curiosity, and it occasionally f***s with you. The limitations do become more evident in the second half of the game. The developers do a great job squeezing the most out of this small map, but the filler in the form of all the backtracking does weigh the second half of this game down. But by that point, I think you're already hooked, so you might as well just go and heat up the PAL card. And so yes, Metal Gear Solid is still a great game 25 years later. The few narrative and gameplay missteps are frankly overshadowed by the sheer ambition and wealth of achievements accomplished by this game, but that's just my take. Please leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts and memories of Metal Gear Solid. As always, thanks for watching, please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to all my existing patrons. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.